welcome back to the Tech Pro Unicorn podcast. I am joined today by Samuel Gregory.
And
Oh no, we're good. I was just going on and on about how I thought Agile brought people together. It brought the developers to the table, and they got to actually participate from day one and interact with the customer, the requester of said technology development. And it's just been, from a people aspect, just such a wonderful thing. I think it leads to better outcomes versus, the days of yore with, here's the technical requirements. Those guys go off and build something, they bring it back, and the folks go, that's not what I wanted. And then there's all this iteration around trying to get it to what it could have originally been solved had they used an Agile and had the developer participate from day one.
Absolutely. And that, whether you're running Agile or not, I think that's such an important aspect to bring to any project is don't just shun or remove a developer from a conversation about design just because they don't do design. Like so much can come from just a soup of different ideas and mindsets and things like that. And I think Agile taught us that it's bringing everyone to the party.
Awesome. From a developer's perspective, what's changed in your world since Agile?
Interesting question, because I was certainly. I don't think. I think I've experienced more waterfall projects since starting my company than I have when I joined. When I started my web development career. Like my web development career was straight into a version of Agile. It's a framework after all. It's a mindset after all. So, a version of Agile. So it kind of made sense a little bit. We what we weren't doing is having everything. We were solely a web development agency. So our web development processes were Agile and running Scrum, but that really didn't teach me about what Scrum really is about, which is different. As we were a siloed team for a start, so we can't be agile. Well, we can be agile, but you're not really getting a full flavor of it because I'm not speaking to a business analyst, I'm not speaking to a designer and all the rest of it. So as my career went on, then I moved companies and went into a company that you were seeing this whole kind of move the way it should be, seeing all of the different aspects working together. So in answer to your question, has it changed? I mean, all I've done is I know not much different because I've always kind of done Agile, but since starting my own company, there are some projects where I just think waterfall is a better solution, especially when you're talking with a client and budget is tight. And me being a new company, a few years ago, we were working with clients where budgets were tight, so you could go in with an Agile mindset, with regards to creating an MVP, but it couldn't be this what sometimes tends to be longer projects under the Agile methodology. Waterfall just seemed to fit the bill. The challenges weren't huge, the scope wasn't massive, the budget wasn't massive. So in those instances, sometimes it's just not hard to think, right, we just need to build this website. Let's just bash it out, do it in a waterfall way. We'll get the design done. We'll move on to development after that's signed off and all the rest of it. So it's kind of been I'm not old enough to see that transition, basically of like the see the light come in, because when was Agile brought? Well, when was Agile kind of made big and whatever? It must have been like 1991, 93 or something. I was watching Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles and throwing food at the wall. I wasn't running Agile projects, unfortunately, at that time.
That's awesome. That's great. As a developer, creating something that has just a great user experience, right, is, I think, what the good developers really aspire to. how do you how do you know, right? How do you get that information to inform you of creating these cool websites that have, less clicks and all the things that people talk about?
Sorry, can you rephrase that question just a second? So user
Sure. Yeah.
experience.
So how do developers get an understanding of what makes a good user experience,
Mhm.
with things like less clicks and such?
Sure. I think it's unusual because I I do think I'm somewhat unique, in that I really care about design and user experience, and I'm a nerd for most things when it comes to website development and design. So I'm genuinely quite passionate about that stuff. There are other, on the other end of the spectrum, there are developers who just want to go into a dark room and just code because they just want to write some badass code. There are
Mm-hmm.
those sorts of people.
Right.
But for someone like me, obviously I'm interested in it, but you still need those um, specialisms around you to really show you the way and to really teach you what makes for good design and what makes for good UX. And generally just picking it up along the way, because I never studied design, I never studied UX, I just picked it up along the way. And I always talk about this idea of following your nose.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever something interesting came up, whether it's a requirements gathering session, whether it's oh, we need more white space in this design, I'm there on Google, then what design white space, like what is that? Or just like looking into it and just seeing if I can pick these things up. um, I think that's where I owe my testament to being aware of these things. It is rare for a developer to have that sort of mindset, just because being a developer requires a very logical way of thinking. Long gone are the days of web developers needing to be creative. I think you really lean into that logical mindset, particularly now. I'm not going to bore you with all the web technologies that have come out recently, but we've gone very much from, developers or website developers needing to know kind of matching Photoshop files to their pixel perfect kind of, implementations on the web. We've gone kind of
Mm-hmm.
from that to being very much like, you know what, you need to solve complex issues in the code behind the scenes and write really good code. Don't even think about the design, because we've got a designer who went to university, who studied design, to think about that stuff. All we need you to worry about is just to implement the design and drive the user journey, whether it's some tool or form or calculator or something like that. So um it yeah, I think my specific interest, I don't come across many developers who really think as much as I do about user experience, which is cool, because it just means that I'm sort of simmering along this on the surface of web development and web design, and kind of picking up on things as I can, and kind of, I don't want to use the word spreading myself thin, but just I take pride in understanding the breadth of the process, as opposed to going super super deep. Although if you want to talk about accessible websites, that's where I go super deep, because I went very very nerdy on that whilst being a developer, and that's where a lot of my, like, I can recall stuff like that, with regards to accessibility. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird. It takes a certain mindset and a certain mentality that I wouldn't expect all developers to have. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, because they're good at what they do at the end of the day.
I love it.
Mm,
You talked a little bit about kind of the evolution of developing of websites, right?
mm,
I remember back in, oh wow, this has to be, man, probably early 90s. And I took an HTML class, and I was like, uh, this is cool, but
mm.
man, it's like so hard, right? And we'd create some basic web page that had like a picture and some text on it, and we'd be like, woohoo! Success, accomplishment. Look at us. This is badass.
Yeah.
or it would have something that you clicked on, a button, and it would link somewhere else. And we're like, oh, that's fancy.
Yeah.
All these tools have helped. There's all these templated based websites now that even if you don't need to develop your own really custom website, right? You can go to a Wix or whatever, and you can spin up a website in, an hour, right? And pop it out onto the World Wide Web, and people can theoretically find you. Why, though, are there still painful websites out there? I mean, there are some crappy websites out there.
Yeah.
I'll protect them all and not name them, but man, sometimes you just come across one and you're like, who the hell did this?
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to name and shame. What are Amazon doing on pretty much everything that they do? Their user experience is just awful. They've got all that money and they can't figure, like, every aspect of an Amazon website is just awful. Anyway, I think it goes back to your previous question, somewhat in your previous question. It comes back to good user experience and having a lack of knowledge there, and the fact that it's so easy to make a website now. I'll go one step better than the Wix and template stuff is now that we have no code tools like Pinegrow or Webflow, which I make a lot of content on my YouTube channel, and they are drag and drop interfaces that allow you to build websites almost like you're a designer. Now, coding a website, it's a different paradigm. With Photoshop, with these design tools, I can create a square and drag it anywhere on the page and then drag something else like a circle on top of that. With code, it doesn't work like that. You're dealing with, they block out their own row. If you think of basically a website as a big grid, and you've got to have clever ways to not only position it, but it's got to then, as someone visits on a web page or on a browser and makes the browser smaller, or they visit on a phone, how does that then flow with the width of the browser? So it's becoming forever more easy to build websites by people who don't know the intricacies of web development. What is accessible websites? What makes an accessible website? Web design, what makes for a good design? I mean, there's more great looking websites than there are accessible websites and usable websites, and that's because designers are taking to these tools and building these websites without those kind of fundamental the fundamental knowledge on what makes good user experience, what's a logical user flow for them to go on. So it is exactly to your point. Websites are just so much easier to build that it's in the wrong, not in the wrong hands. God, everyone's got to learn somewhere. God, I'd hate to look at some of the websites I was building when I first started out, but there is more to a website than what it looks like, and that's what a lot of, beginner developers forget, or don't know at that point. I'm not picking out designers by any stretch of imagination here, but as the bar lowers, the standard sort of lowers, and I think that's what it is. But I guess you've all got to start somewhere. It's a shame that sometimes people are selling their services to the companies and sort of not ruining their reputation, but certainly could be putting a business at risk because they're not catering to a good user experience. That company might be losing traction. They might be users might be dropping off at certain points in the website because it just wasn't put together very well. So, but it is what it is in the day, and these tools will make it even easier to make less mistakes, hopefully. And that's what I'm kind of there to help out with as well. What my kind of full stack agency thing is there to do is just to help the whole kind of process, to have an appreciation for that whole process.
I love it. So, I mean, it's just cool to talk to, right, somebody with some pretty wicked technical skills, right, in a career in technology and development, who has a view and an eye on the user experience and the end result of what they're producing. So I challenge anyone who's interviewing or needs a website or whatever to really have a conversation with the person who's going to build your site or the team, and make sure that they take the time to understand who the customer is, what the customer wants. I love that you pointed out Amazon, and I know that we say you can get anything on Amazon, and sure, the shopping experience might be great. You Google search in Amazon, it comes up with a bunch of products. You click on something, it's easy to buy it. But try to do anything else on Amazon other than shop, right? Try to find your order history. Try to get help with customer service. Try to find anything else other than buying products on Amazon, and that is trash. It is difficult. It is hard. It's not user friendly. It's not designed with that purpose. All they want you to do is give them your money.
Absolutely, and they could probably do a better job at doing that as well, but they somehow miss the mark. I mean, it becomes apparent when you compare Amazon products, the inconsistency between their experiences. That's why we have what we call design systems, that you identify the commonalities between all those elements, and then you use those similar elements, but you probably got 3 different versions of a primary button on Amazon or whatever, and they've got completely siloed teams that have no kind of connection to each other. They're not talking to each other. It'd be interesting to know how they cross-pollinate that information, whether they are running some sort of scaled agile approach or something. Well, clearly they're not, because it's as if they're not talking to each other. But that to me, that's where it becomes very, very apparent.
Awesome. Well, and Samuel, you have another book. We kind of talked about the Agile lingo, but you also have, again, trying to simplify the conversation, the startup lingo, which is another book. For those of you that see me, that are watching on YouTube or whatever, and see me looking away, I'm stalking Samuel as we chat here. So he's got another book called Startup Lingo. Is that the same kind of concept? You're taking like all these startup buzzwords and kind of just simplifying them?
Absolutely, yeah, and it's all trying to foster this understanding of the web development process. Making websites, you're bound to encounter startups, and there's lots of like lingo that happens in the startup world that I'm just trying to sort of bring together. And I think the one thing that you won't know unless you follow me on YouTube is the fact that I wrote these books with a bot. I released these books two weeks apart, something like that, and I built this kind of web scraper, because these glossaries exist out there in the world. Like I say, that my initial challenge or my frustrations was that I would go onto these glossaries, and the examples or the sort of descriptions or the definitions would be just monstrously long. So I was like, well, okay, why don't I just build something to go out there and scrape these websites, dump it into an Excel spreadsheet, and I just live in Excel. And this was terrible. It was awful, but I was living in an Excel spreadsheet for about 4 weeks, and it drove me nuts. But I like to think that me and this Python web scraper bot wrote the book together, and I would go through the definitions, clean it up, obviously, go through the definitions, and then just kind of put my own spin on it. Some of these words I knew at the drop of a hat. Sometimes I needed to go out and learn them and whatever, but it's all in the kind of same vein of just trying to simplify all these existing explanations of some of these terms. So the startup one, I feel like as more and more startups need more websites, I feel like we're going to be encountering them, and being able to talk to them is kind of crucial. So absolutely in the same sort of vein of empowering these full stack agencies.
I love it. You and your Python bot out to change the world. That's so cool.
Just don't look at the code.
Is the Python bot the giraffe?
No, it's not, unfortunately. The giraffe is someone special I got my eye on.
Okay, there you go. That's awesome. Well, Samuel, this has been awesome, man. It's great to talk to a technologist that is breaking it down, making it simple, focused on the end user experience, in trying to make the world really a better place. So if you're interested in what Samuel's doing, obviously you can find him on YouTube. I'll have to go stalk that, pull the link, and put it in the links around this podcast. His company, the Full Stack Agency, if you go to thefullstackagency.xyz under shop, you can get Agile Lingo, Startup Lingo. What a way to shortcut kind of your painful experience trying to learn either of those two areas, which is very cool. And then JupiterandtheGiraffe.com, also a really cool site to get a hold of Samuel. So we talked about Agile and developers and the evolution of development and crappy websites. And, it was just so fun to really talk to someone who's just a differentiator in the development space. So I appreciate you taking the time and joining us on the podcast.
No worries, and I will say, if I hang out on my Discord server. I haven't found a shortcut way to announce that, but it's on my YouTube videos at the bottom. But I hang out there quite a lot, and if people want to book a call with me, I love to meet people and chat to people about everything and anything web.
Awesome. And then I almost forgot to mention the fellow podcasters podcast,
of course,
The Tech Show, which is very cool.
Very good.
Awesome. Thank you again, Samuel.
Thank you. It's been great.